Hi guys, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. It is the end of semester 1 for me. I teach 8th grade English, and something that I did this year just worked out really well, kind of surprisingly well, and I just thought I would tell you about it and pass on this tidbit of information. One of the harder things to track as an English teacher is your students' reading. It's very hard to tell whether they are reading or not. It's hard to motivate them to read if they don't want to read. It's hard to come up with a good system for teaching them some of the strategies to make them a better reader, but letting them choose their own books so that they're actually reading something that they're interested in. It can be really tough, and for a while people tried to make it a little bit easier with programs like AR and having kids take AR tests that, test all of that for you, can tell whether a kid read, I guess, or like reading logs that the parents sign off on. But I feel like those always just turn into lying logs, and who knows if the kid is actually reading. So it can just be difficult to come up with a way to encourage reading without being punitive about it, but still hold kids accountable in some way. It's just tough. And as an 8th grade teacher, I'm not interested in something really complex or overbearing, because my students are almost in high school now and I want them to read because they like to. I mean, we all do. We just want our kids to read because we know that it makes them better writers, and it makes them better readers, obviously, and more able to access content in other areas. It opens their worldview. It gives them insight into other worlds and other perspectives, and books can reflect back to them things that they're going through and help them work their way through all of these things in adolescence. And we just know that reading is such a good thing for our students, and we definitely want them to be choosing books for themselves and reading independently. So this semester, I feel like most of my students actually read quite a bit, and I had them track it and I had them prove that to me. And I loved grading their kind of reading log things that I had them do. I rarely enjoy grading. I have 210 students and it's just a very laborious process, but I loved it. So let me tell you a little bit about what we did this semester. I'm gonna do it again next semester. I guess I had kind of two different sources of inspiration that sort of just led to this very simple, I'm not gonna tell you anything groundbreaking or mind-blowing, but this is just what we did. And it was kind of influenced by 2 different sources of information. So over the summer, I read the book, The Book Whisperer by Donna Lynn Miller. If you're an English teacher, you're probably familiar with this book already. So Donna Lynn Miller teaches 6th grade. I think she has 2 different classes, so about 60 kids, and her students read 40 books a year. That's pretty impressive. And she gives them 20 minutes a day of in-class reading time. I don't think she does whole group novels. I know there's kind of a whole school of thought moving away from that. But her students choose the books that they want to read. She has a very extensive library in her classroom, and she herself reads a ton, so she's able to talk to her students about books, and she's able to recommend books for different kids and just really get them excited about reading. And I am a very big reader myself. I didn't want to be outdone by 6th graders, so I read 43 books this year, and I have a video reviewing all 43 of those books if you want to check that out. But I was just inspired by her to bring my love for reading into my classroom a little bit more, and also to hold my kids to a little bit higher standard, to have them read some more books. So my situation's a little bit different from hers. I have lots and lots of students, and I only get about 45 minutes per day with them. So I was kind of looking at how she sets her classes up, and if I were to dedicate the same percentage of time to silent reading that she does, it would only be 4 minutes a day. And that's barely enough time to find your place in your book before it would be over. So we didn't do daily reading, but at the beginning of the year, we did a lot of weekly silent reading, and then I would just have them bring a book with them at all times, and we would refer to those books quite a bit to look at different grammar questions and stuff like that. We also do community circles once a week. So in those circles, I have a lot of videos about those as well. Maybe I will remember to link them up here. especially at the beginning of the year, we would do a lot of like book talks, just, you know, quickly go around the circle and just say what book you're reading at the moment and like what the main character is like. I'm also very fortunate that I received a lot of young adult books this year. I had quite a few donated to my classroom, and I'm on like the PR list for a lot of young adult book publishers, so I'm able to bring in new books to my classroom pretty often, which is very nice. I also buy a lot of them myself just because I want to read them, and then after I read them I put them on the shelf. So I'm able to talk with my kids about books really often, and then I'm also able to bring in high interest young adult novels, so they're just right there at their fingertips. So I remember one week I just pulled out like 35 newish books and handed one out to everybody, and they had a couple of minutes just to like read the back, flip through, judge the book by its cover, and then stand up and in about 15 to 20 seconds just tell us what they knew so far about this book. So that was a quick way to practice, like, you know, assessing a book and trying to see whether or not it's something that you'd want to read. And then my students were also able to hear about like 30 different books. So from the get-go at the beginning of the year, we just talked about books a lot. I would tell them about the books that I was reading. I have like a little place at the front of my room where I would set a book after I read it, if I recommended it, so students were able to take it. I have a really simple, probably not very effective, but very simple library checkout system. I just have a binder with sheets of paper in it, and students write down their name, their period, the book that they borrowed, the date that they checked it out, and then the date when they return it. They just put that date again. And if a student wants to be the next one to read that book, I have like these little tabs so they can add it. They add their name to that like line, and so then whoever is returning a book, when they write the date when they returned it, they can see the next person's name there and try and find that person and give them the book since they know they wanted to read it next. I lose a lot of books still. There are books that don't ever find their way back to my shelves, but I figure I'm given a lot of books, so if some of mine wander away, oh well, at least they're being read. So anyway, that's kind of a side conversation there, but just having a culture and a climate of being excited about books and talking about books, borrowing and sharing books is important to establish at the beginning of the year too, I think. So after a couple weeks of like really being intense about them having a book and asking them what they're reading and giving them some time in class, not tons of time, but some time in class to read, I told them that for the semester they were going to need to read 10 books. And a lot of them were like, 10 books? I'm never going to be able to read 10 books in a semester. For some of them, they're like, no problem, I can read way more than that. But I also told them, you will not have to do any book reports on these. You will not be taking any quizzes. You're not gonna make like a one-pager or anything. They know I love one-pagers. So you are gonna be reading, but you're not gonna be doing a bunch of book reports or anything. So they were kind of like skeptical. I could see they're like, really? What's the catch? So my requirement for them to show me what they read and like reflect a little bit on what they read was very minimal. And the reason why is because as much as I love reading and I love talking about books, I make videos about books, I have a book Instagram, Too Cool for Middle School Books. I follow other people's like Bookstagram accounts and booktuber accounts, and I was really inspired by all of that actually. But even for me, sometimes I'm like, ugh, I just want to read a book sometimes and not have to like write an entire review of it. I was really good about like keeping up my Bookstagram account for a long time, and then I just got like tired. I'm like, I just want to read, okay? Like, just believe me, I read it. Sometimes now I'll just like post a book on Instagram like, this one's pretty good, you should check it out if you're a teacher or whatever. So I figured I would extend that same grace to my students. So I created a really simple way for them to show me what they read. I just created this kind of Instagram-y thing in Google Draw, and it had instructions on it and then a space for 10 pictures and like 10 one-sentence reviews. So after they would read a book, they would snap a selfie with that book, and on their face they were supposed to show like their opinion about the book. So like, was it amazing? Was it kind of like a sad book? Did they hate it? Whatever their reaction to the book was, that's, you know, what they would put on their face. So that's kind of their review. And then I just had them write a one-sentence review. So it could be like, this book started off slow, but then I really ended up enjoying it. Or one of the best books I ever read, highly recommend it. Thought it was gonna be good from the cover, but it was actually very boring. It really didn't matter, just whatever they wanted to say in one sentence. And I was very not picky about what they read. I didn't care what they read. They asked so many questions about that, like, well, what if it's like a little kid book? I'm like, that's what you want to read, that's what you want to read. What about graphic novels? What about that? And I was just like, you know what? I don't care. You can read anything that you want, but it makes it a little bit more real when they have to like take a picture of it and say like, this is what I read. So I did have a few kids that started off like kind of joking around and they put like picture books as their first book, but then I think like the joke got kind of boring and then they read more grade level appropriate books. I do give my students like a Lexile level test. I think 3 times a year we have to give it, but I really don't focus on that when they're choosing books. I've definitely had kids who have like far below grade level reading abilities according to a test anyway, but then they pick up a book that's more like at a 7th or 8th grade level and it's about something that they're interested in or the character is somebody that they're interested in and they read it. They may not be, you know, fully comprehending every little nuance of the book, but they read it. And I'm sure it improved their reading abilities and increased their love or their like, at least, of reading. So that's all I'm really going for here. So it was very simple. And so they were like wary of how simple it was, but they kind of liked doing the actual assignment part. And I gave it to them towards the beginning of the year. So they had like, I don't know, how many weeks do we have in a semester? 18 or something. We have a lot of weeks. They had a long time to get it done. I'm sure some of them like waited until the end and had to like scramble to find the books and take the pictures. And some kids would say like, oh, I already returned it to the library. Is it okay if I like grab my friend's copy and take a picture of hers? Or like I had the book on Kindle. Can I like take a picture of my Kindle? Yeah, whatever. It really didn't matter to me. Some of them kind of like covered their faces with the book. Some of them even got very creative. They would put a picture of the book in like Instagram stories, and then you know how you can like tap in like your face like into the picture? They did that, and all of that was fine. That's cool. And then they did their little 1-sentence summaries. So for me, grading them was actually really fun because it was kind of like clicking through somebody's like Bookstagram. It was just one page. I didn't have to do a lot of clicking around. So once it's an assignment in Google Classroom, the Google Drawing is something that I've like forced a copy of to every student, and then I just like click on that assignment and I can click through every single kid. It was really fun, like seeing their faces and seeing the books that they chose and seeing if there was any kind of like a pattern, like kids that like a certain genre, or maybe they really stuck with a certain series. Maybe they were a little all over the place. It was fun to see that and just to get it in kind of like a very quick snapshot form, because that's what we do too. Like if we're scrolling through somebody's Bookstagram, we just see a picture of it. We maybe read one line of the review. Did they like it or not? Was it good or not? Okay, moving on. Like that's fine. That's all we really want to read or post sometimes. So I was like, that's good enough for me. And the other thing that I allowed them to do too is if it was over 350 pages, they could take a picture of it twice and count it as 2 books. Some of those like Harry Potter books and Tom Clancy or whatever are really long, so I let those count as 2. So not everybody got up to their 10 book goal, but a lot of kids did, or they were kind of around like, you know, 7, 8. And I think that's really good. Most adults probably don't read that many books in a semester's worth of time. So in my grading, I also made sure that it wasn't punitive. So how I did it is if you read nothing and you turned in nothing, you got a nothing. If you give me 0 to work with, you're getting a 0. That's how it works. But if you read 1 book, and that book was probably the one that we did for our guided literature circles in class, but that's fine. 1 would count as an 11 out of 20. In my class, a 20-point assignment is like a pretty big assignment. So 11 out of 20 if you just did 1. And then obviously, if you read 2 books, that'd be 12 out of 20. So you're still being kind of like rewarded with points. Like it's not gonna totally tank your grade if you didn't get a ton of reading done. Like if you read 5 books, that's pretty impressive. That's only half of the goal, but I don't think that a 5 should be like a 50%, an F, you know? So for this assignment, a 5 was more like a C. Like, yeah, you read 5 books, that's really good. That's still gonna contribute to your overall grade and give you a decent score. And then if you got, 8 books, that's 18, so that's an A, I think. So 8, 9, or 10 books, you get an A, because that's great to read that many. So just my attitude towards it was like, just read, that's all I care about. I will reward you for reading. I will make books available to you as much as I possibly can. I will talk about books with you. I will try to coach you through choosing a book that you're interested in, and allow you opportunities to talk to other people about books. I'll give you book recommendations, and let's just read. I didn't require them to read like 20 in a semester like Donald Miller's kids would, because I didn't give them as much time in class. But as 8th graders, I do want them to start that habit anyway of reading on their own, and like finding time to read on their own. Like, what works best for you? Is it right before bed? Do you like to read a couple chapters? Do you prefer to read like maybe right when you get home from school? Maybe before you jump into your other homework? Or do you like to like bring a book with you, and if you're just like bored somewhere, maybe read then? Like, I think it's good to start to establish like your own reading habits and like figure out what works for you. So overall, this worked pretty well. And again, my favorite part of it was just that like the actual grading process for me was very fun. I really enjoyed seeing the things that my students were reading. I liked seeing their little selfies and stuff. I just thought that it was so fun. So I'll link down below that Google drawing. You can use it in your classroom if you want. You could create your own version of it, but I'll just offer mine if you want to get that one on Teachers Pay Teachers. It was just something that worked really well for us. So I'm gonna push that out to them again next semester, and we're gonna do the same thing. And as much as I want break to last forever, this is something that I'm excited about going into second semester, is to like suggest more books, and I have a few new ones I'm gonna bring into my classroom and see if they read anything over Christmas break, and kind of get this whole process started again. So yeah, it was a positive thing overall. Most kids got a decent grade. I mean, there were a few of those like zeros, or only read a couple, but maybe next semester their goal can just be to do better than they did last semester. If they read 3 last semester, read 4 this semester. A lot of them were like 10 books. I haven't even read 10 books in my entire life. So sometimes, anything is progress. And that's what we're looking for. So I know that a lot of people, English teachers, reading teachers, spend a lot of time like researching what are best practices for establishing good like independent reading habits. So if you have any other suggestions, please leave those down below. I love hearing from other teachers about their ideas for doing stuff like this. And also let us know if there were any books that your kids really liked reading. A few of the favorites, it seemed like, on my students' little like fake bookstagram things that they turned into me. Internment was on there quite a few times. The Sun is Also a Star, I saw that quite a few times. Still Harry Potter going strong, and like Divergent and stuff, so yeah. Alright guys, I still do have other assignments that I need to grade, unfortunately, that are a little bit less fun. But they are on Google Slides too, and they're kind of pretty, so they shouldn't be too bad. I'll have to make another video if this goes well and let you know. These were for literature circle things, so need to go take a look at those. So anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!